I've been asked a couple times what characters I want to see in Jump Force, and now that I've done a video about what I think the roster size is going to be, I figured it'd be about time that I do a full wishlist video. Again, I've already talked about why I think the roster size is going to be around 41 at launch, anywhere between 40 and 45. For this video, I'm going to go with a 41 character roster, meaning that we have 11 characters to choose from. So if there were to be 11 more characters in Jump Force, these are the characters that I would personally like to see the most. This video is entirely opinion based. With that in mind, I would love to hear your opinions. What characters would you like to see added to the roster? Let me know in the comment section below. On top of that, before we jump in, I want to thank you so much for 20,000 subscribers. That is truly a big milestone. 10,000 felt like a massive deal hitting that extra digit, but I have to admit, because of a pretty big drought period I had in between 10,000 and 20,000, 20,000 almost feels more important because I rushed pretty quickly to that 10,000 milestone. So now that I've hit 20,000 subscribers, I feel very thankful for you and your continued support throughout that time. Alright, with that out of the way, let's jump into the wish list. Again, an entirely opinion-based video, so a lot of my biases are going to show up in this one. Let's start with Pain. I've talked about how much I want to see Pain in this game for a while now. He is such an awesome character, both aesthetically and for his amazing power set. I don't think they'll go for this character though, because a lot of things come up during his development process. For example, if you wanted to make multiple Pains appear on screen at once in the same move, what would that look like for the avatar/creator character system? If they use that move, are they going to have a generic Pain NPC pop up and help them? Or are they going to have a copy of themselves? How is that going to work? And if it is a copy of themselves, is it modified in any way? It's not an impossible design hurdle to overcome, but it's certainly a roadblock for the design team to have to work around. And if that's the case, why not just pick an easier villain to pull off, like Madara or Toby? Sarada. Again, I've talked about Sarada on this channel a lot, and I don't know how to properly explain exactly why Sarada is such an awesome character without going into the depth of Boruto and Naruto Shippuden's story, but trust me, the character is really damn awesome. In short though, I would say that one of the more interesting things about her character is how much she admires the 7th Hokage, Naruto, idolizing him to the point where she wants to become the next Hokage. Well, maybe not necessarily the next Hokage, but certainly a future Hokage. And if we're gonna have Sarada in the game, why not have Boruto as well? I previously have said that I didn't really care too much about Boruto Uzumaki's character, and I was more interested in the other characters in the series, but recently I started reading the Boruto manga, and damn, Boruto's a pretty interesting character. After the events of the movie, Boruto's character becomes more focused on becoming the best shinobi he can be, looking up to Sasuke in the same way that Sarada looks up to Naruto. On top of that, the potential for his moveset is through the roof, but I've talked about that before. Nagisa. Assassination Classroom was a massive surprise to me. I did not expect to like that series at all, but it was seriously impressive. Most of you probably know that Koro-sensei was in J-Stars, but I personally don't think that he's going to make it into Jump Force. I think a student of his, like Nagisa, would make more sense for Jump Force for the reasons I've talked about in a previous video, which I will link in the description and in the card section right now. Speaking of Assassination Classroom characters, Karma. I just mentioned that I don't think Koro-sensei is more likely than one of his students. Nagisa is a fantastic character and everything, but Karma was initially the character that flipped my perspective on the show. At first I thought it was just going to be some silly comedy series and that I wasn't going to enjoy it, but the episode that Karma shows up is truly outstanding. But perhaps that's a conversation for another day. Ruby Rose. Earlier this year, the creators of Ruby and Weekly Shonen Jump announced that Ruby would be getting its own official Weekly Shonen Jump series. I doubt Ruby Rose would ever make it to the main roster considering the announcement being fairly recent, but perhaps she's got a chance for DLC? Probably not. It seems fairly unlikely, but that's why this is a wish list. Izuku Midoriya. This is one of the few My Hero Academia characters on this list, but I thought I would start with the main character for obvious reasons. And out of all of the main shonen protagonists, he's one of my favorites, so I would absolutely love to see him join the Jump Force roster. Shoto Todoroki. Shoto will almost definitely not happen due to the popularity of Bakugo, who fills a fairly similar role. Toward the end of the anime, and more specifically the subsequent events in the manga, Bakugo is incredibly popular, and he's also more important to the story, at least in those specific points I was talking about. But I would be lying if I said I didn't want Shoto Todoroki over Bakugo, because I feel like Shoto Todoroki offers more in his moveset. At the end of the day, it's not not too big of a deal because whichever one of these characters doesn't make it into the game, I'm going to create them with the avatar system. But again, I would be lying to you if I didn't say I would prefer Shota. All Might feels like the most likely My Hero Academia character next to Deku, and for good reason. All Might is a very important character to the series, and not only that, but also very important to Deku's character. Having Deku in the game and not All Might would make My Hero Academia come off as something that it's not. That mentor/student relationship that they have, I think is so important to both of their characters that it would feel very absent to not have either of them in the game simultaneously. Asta. While I haven't finished Black Clover, I will say that I've enjoyed Asta's character so far. His powers are certainly unique, especially among the Jump Force roster. This is one of those characters you couldn't necessarily create with the avatar system because of his very specific moveset. Considering that, I would be truly disappointed to not see Asta either on the main roster or as DLC. Kintoki. I do not know much about Gintama. I do know it's a comedy series, but I also know that there's fights in the series. I really just don't know enough to truly comment on this series as a whole. But what I will say is that Kintoki seems like a fun character, especially from what I played with him in J-Stars, and I would love to see him return in Jump Force. And the final slot on my list, perhaps maybe one you're not expecting, Kinnikuman. Again, not a character most of you were expecting. He's not a particularly popular character, certainly not one that's discussed very often in the community. I don't care too much about the character. I've never seen the series. I just think it's a really interesting, weird pocket of anime that hasn't been explored in Jump Force or even J-Stars. For people unfamiliar with the character and has no idea what I'm talking about, the English adaptation of this was called Ultimate Muscle. It's quite old, so I understand if you're not interested in watching the source material, but it's just kind of a goofy wrestling show. Again, it would be a silly character, but I don't think that's too big of a deal because at the end of the day, we've got a City Hunter character in the same game as Goku, so I don't think that this necessarily matters. Although, to be fair, we haven't seen a single comedic character so far in Jump Force. I want to thank you for your continued support. I want to apologize for the background noise that you might have heard in this video. I'm recording this during the day, which is not normally when I record, but that's the way it had to be for this particular upload. Again, thank you for your continued support. If you could leave a like on the video, it helps other people find it. Subscribe to keep up to date with future content. My name has been Bilbzy, and I will see you in the next video.